Tonight, we step into a world that never was. A world born not of truth, but of what if. In the story we know, Jon Snow grew up in the cold halls of Winterfell, among the Starks. Always the outsider, the bastard in the shadows. But imagine, what if Lord Eddard Stark had made a different choice that day? What if, instead of bringing his secret child home to the north, he left him in the south, in the hands of the lions of Casterly Rock? In this world, Jon Snow grows not under the watchful eyes of the old gods, but under the golden lions of Lannister pride. His sword is polished by gold, not snow. His heart learns cunning instead of honor. He dines beside Cersei. He spars with Jaime. And he learns wisdom from Tyrion. Though even among lions, he feels the blood of wolves howling in his dreams. This is the story of a boy born of ice, raised by fire and gold. A tale of power, pride, and destiny rewritten. So close your eyes, breathe slowly, and let the whispers of this world guide you through the question, what if Jon Snow grew up with the Lannisters? In another life, Lord Eddard Stark did not ride north with the babe in his arms. The war was over. Robert Baratheon sat on the Iron Throne, and peace, fragile as glass, hung over the realm. Cersei Lannister watched the Northern Lord with quiet suspicion, and Tywin, ever patient, ever calculating, saw in that small child a future he could mold, a boy without a name, without a place, a boy who could one day serve his bloodline's purpose. So when Ned Stark spoke softly, asking for a favor, keep him safe until the North is ready for him, Tywin agreed with that cold, golden smile. And thus, Jon Snow, son of fire and ice, grew not beneath the snow-covered towers of Winterfell, but within the red walls of the capital. He learned to walk on marble floors instead of frozen stone, to bow to lions instead of wolves. He was clothed in crimson and gold, and called John Hill, a name given to all bastards of the Groundlands. He sparred with Jaime, dined with Tyrion, and endured the piercing glances of Queen Cersei, who saw in him something she could neither understand nor destroy. Some nights, when the moon hung pale over the city, he dreamed of a cold wind calling his name, a voice from far away, whispering, "The North remembers." But when he woke, all he saw were golden banners and the shadow of the Red Keep towering above him. The boy of ice had entered the lion's den, and the den had begun to change him. Years passed beneath the golden banners of House Lannister. Jon grew tall, graceful, and quiet, a stranger with northern eyes in a city of gold and lies. Tywin Lannister watched him carefully. The boy's silence, his discipline, his hunger to prove himself. All things Tywin respected and feared to waste. So he taught him the ways of power, not with affection, but with precision. Loyalty is a coin, boy, Tywin would say, his voice echoing in the cold halls of the Red Keep. It's spent only once. Spend it wisely. Jon learned fast. He studied the history of the realm beside maesters, sparred every dawn with Jaime in the training yard, and shared quiet dinners with Tyrion, whose wit cut sharper than any sword. And though the queen, Cersei, kept her distance, she watched him, always, her eyes full of something between contempt and curiosity. At 14, Jon rode beside Tywin for the first time, through fields of gold and banners red as blood. The people bowed to their passing. A lion's cub, though not born of their pride, he never corrected them. For in truth, he no longer knew who he was. The wolf's blood inside him grew quieter each year, buried beneath the roar of lions. One night, Tyrion found him staring at the moonlit sea. "You look north," the imp said softly, "as if something there still calls to you." Jon only nodded. "I don't know what it is, but I feel it in my bones," Tyrion smiled, half pity, half understanding. "Perhaps it's the part of you that the lions will never tame." And so he grew, under Tywin's command, under Cersei's suspicion, under the shadow of a legacy he did not yet understand. A boy of ice, taught to roar like a lion, never knowing that, deep within, the wolf was only waiting for winter to return. The Red Keep woke each morning to the sound of steel and sweat. In the yard, beneath the pale sun of King's Landing, two blades met, gold and silver flashing like fire and ice. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, and Jon Hill, the quiet bastard raised by lions. Every dawn they trained together. Jaime fought like a dancer, quick, confident, unshakable. Jon fought like a storm, silent, focused, but burning beneath the calm. "You learn fast," Jaime said once, lowering his sword. Smiling. "Almost makes me worry." Jon wiped the sweat from his brow. "You're not old enough to worry yet." Jaime laughed, bright and careless. For in Jon, he saw the brother he never truly had, a reflection of his own youth, before the crown had stained his name. And Jon found in Jaime something close to warmth, a mentor, a rival, a man who taught him that honor could exist even among lions. But the queen did not smile upon their bond. Cersei saw in Jon a threat, a reminder of secrets she could not control. "He is not one of us," she whispered to Jaime one night, her voice sharp as broken glass. "He never will be." Jaime turned away. "He's more one of us than you think." In the years that followed, Jon's skill with the blade became legend in the capital. He fought in tourneys under no banner, always refusing gold or fame. "I fight for discipline," he said once to Tyrion, "not for applause." Yet, in the shadows, Tywin watched him grow, his mind sharp, his loyalty uncertain. To Tywin, he was a weapon in the making. To Cersei, a danger. To Jaime, a brother. And so, amid the crimson halls of the Red Keep, a bond of steel and blood was forged. Two men, lion and wolf, brothers not by birth, but by the edge of their swords. And though neither knew it yet, the day would come when one would have to choose between the other, and the truth that bound them both. The Queen watched him often, not with affection, nor curiosity, but with something darker. To Cersei Lannister, Jon Hill was a reminder that control was never perfect. He walked the halls of her home with the calm of a wolf, yet bowed like a servant of lions. He spoke little. He obeyed. But his eyes, those cold northern eyes, saw too much. Once, she found him standing on the balcony, the wind tugging at his dark hair, his gaze fixed upon the horizon, where the sea met the mist. "Do you dream of the north, boy?" she asked softly, her voice dripping like honey over poison. Jon bowed his head. "I dream of snow, your grace. But dreams are only ghosts." "Ghosts," she repeated, smiling faintly. "Yes, and some ghosts should stay buried. In court, she spoke of him with quiet scorn. A bastard's blood, she would whisper to her ladies. You can polish iron all you wish. It will never become gold. Yet even she could not deny his strength. When he entered the throne room, guards straightened their backs. When he spoke, even lords paused to listen. Tyrion once told her, half drunk and amused, "Careful, dear sister. You're trying too hard not to like him." Her smile vanished like a blade drawn from silk. "He is a mistake wearing armor." But deep inside, beneath the pride and venom, something in her stirred. Fear, perhaps, or envy. For every time she looked at him, she saw what she would never be. Loyalty without greed, power without thirst, and blood that commanded respect, even without a crown. Jon never answered her hate. He simply endured it, quietly, as if he knew that one day fire and ice would meet not in war, but in silence, across the marble floors of the Red Keep. And in that silence, the Queen's disdain became something far more dangerous. Fascination. In King's Landing, honor was a rare thing, a fragile bird caged among lions. Jon Hill carried it quietly, like a secret. He did not wear golden armor, nor boast of his bloodline. He fought for order, for truth, for the small sense of justice left in the capital. When thieves were hanged, he spoke for mercy. When soldiers mocked the poor, he stepped between them. "You'll die for kindness one day," Tyrion warned him once, sipping his wine lazily. Jon smiled faintly. Then I'll die as myself. The people began to whisper about the bastard knight, the man who knelt before no coin and bowed to no cruelty. Tywin watched this rise with cold pride. Let them love him, he said. Love is useful until it blinds. Jaime, now older and weary of court games, looked at Jon with something like envy. You still believe in honor, he said one evening as they cleaned their blades. I lost mine a long time ago. Then take it back, Jon replied softly. Jaime laughed, a hollow sound. And how would I do that? Jon turned toward the setting sun. By remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. That night, for the first time in many years, Jaime dreamt of Casterly Rock. Not of gold or glory, but of innocence. And in that moment, the bastard knight had done what no lord or king could. He reminded a Lannister what honor truly meant, but in the shadows, not all eyes were kind. Cersei's spies whispered of the people's affection, of soldiers calling him the wolf in gold. To her, it was treason wrapped in admiration. A wolf cannot wear a lion's mane forever, she said coldly to her council. Sooner or later, it bites, and somewhere deep in the Red Keep, Jon began to feel the cage closing around him. Not of chains, but of crowns and secrets. For every step toward honor in King's Landing was a step away from safety. Far to the north, beyond the reach of gold and glory, the winds began to change. Rumors drifted down to King's Landing. Whispers of war. Banners rising once more above Winterfell. The Starks had fallen. Robb Stark, the young wolf, had been betrayed. The red wedding painted the rivers crimson, and the north had no king, only ghosts. When the news reached the capital, the court celebrated. Cersei smiled behind her goblet. Tywin called it necessary order. But Jon did not speak. That night, he climbed the steps of the Red Keep. Alone, his breath sharp with grief he could not explain. He had never met Robb, never seen Winterfell, yet something inside him shattered, as if part of his soul had died in that bloody hall. In the quiet, Tyrion found him by the window, staring north. You mourn strangers? He asked softly. Jon shook his head. Not strangers. Family I never knew. The hand of the king looked at him for a long while. Blood remembers, Tyrion whispered, even when the mind forgets. Days later, Jon stood before Tywin, his voice calm but cold. Was it you? Tywin didn't flinch. I did what was needed. Needed, Jon repeated quietly, or convenient. The old lion smiled faintly. There's no difference. That night, the young man who had been raised among lions dreamed of a direwolf standing before a burning castle. Its eyes were gray and full of sorrow. When he woke, his hands were trembling, and the golden sunlight spilling through his window felt colder than winter itself. For the first time, Jon began to understand. the blood in his veins would never bow to gold. And though he wore crimson, his heart beat for the north. The lion had raised him, but the wolf was waking. The realm burned. From the icy shores of the north to the golden fields of the reach, banners rose like storms. 5 kings fought for one throne, and in King's Landing, John Hill watched from behind the walls of red stone, the sky thick with smoke and fear. He had trained to be a soldier, but the war he saw was not of swords. It was of lies, of whispers that killed faster than blades. Cersei feasted while men starved. Tywin wrote letters that decided fates before blood was spilled. Jaime rode to battle in glory, and Tyrion drank to forget the cost of victory. And Jon stood between them all, a lion's soldier with a wolf's conscience. Pick a side, Tywin told him one night. The realm needs decisiveness, not doubt. Jon met his gaze, steady and silent. And who speaks for those crushed beneath your sides, my lord? Tywin's eyes hardened like stone. Those who fall were never meant to rise. But when the Battle of Blackwater came, and the city shook under fire and screams, Jon fought beside Jaime. Not for the throne, nor the queen, but for the innocents running through the streets. He carried children from burning houses, shielded strangers from the rain of fire. His cloak torn, his hands scorched, yet his eyes never left the sky. He saw the wildfire bloom, green light devouring everything it touched, turning night into a monstrous dawn. So this, he whispered, is the price of kings. When morning came, the city was silent. Victory had a taste of ash. And in the halls of the Red Keep, where gold still glittered and laughter returned, Jon walked among the wounded, his heart heavy with truths no one else could see. The War of 5 Kings had changed nothing, only crowned new monsters and buried more innocents beneath the stones. That night, Tyrion found him sitting alone beside the harbor. "You look like you've seen ghosts," he said softly. Jon stared at the black water. "I have." "Then remember their names," Tyrion replied. "Someone should." And as the wind from the sea grew colder, Jon looked north again, whispering to the darkness, "One day, I'll come home." The north bled, and the world pretended not to hear. The news of the Red Wedding had reached King's Landing weeks ago, yet still the air carried the weight of unspoken sorrow. Robb Stark was gone. Catelyn Stark was gone. The river ran red, and the wolves had fallen silent. In the great hall of the Red Keep, the lords feasted to celebrate the peace restored. Laughter filled the air, brittle, hollow, echoing against the stone walls like ghosts. Jon sat apart, his cup untouched. He could hear the songs, the rains of Castamere, sweet and cruel, and every note cut through him like cold steel. Tyrion found him there, silent as ever. "They call it justice," he said softly. Jon's eyes lifted, dark and distant. "That I want no part of justice." That night, the rain did not stop. Jon walked through the courtyard, the torches trembling under the wind. He thought of faces he'd never seen. Brothers, sisters, a father whose name he bore without knowing why. He thought of Winterfell, a place he'd only imagined, and wondered if its walls still stood against the storm. A raven arrived before dawn, sealed not with wax, but with blood. No one knew who sent it. No name, no words, only a small piece of fur, gray and matted inside. Jon closed his hand around it. The world faded. For a moment, he swore he could hear the howling of a dire wolf, far away and dying. In the days that followed, he spoke little and smiled no more. Cersei called him weak. Tywin called him sentimental. But Tyrion saw something different. "You're not mourning strangers," he said. "You're mourning the truth trying to reach you." Jon said nothing. But in his heart, the silence broke. And for the first time, the lion's cub began to hear the wolf's call clearly. It whispered through dreams and shadows, "Come home." And in that whisper, Jon Hill, the bastard knight, began to die. In his place, something older, colder, and truer began to awaken. Truth is a cruel thing in King's Landing. It never stays buried. It simply waits until someone is brave enough to bleed for it. One evening, as the city slept beneath a storm, Tyrion entered Jon's chambers with a parchment in hand. His eyes were darker than wine. "You should read this," he whispered. Jon took the scroll, its seal broken, its words trembling in ink and shadow. Rhaegar Targaryen, Lyanna Stark, a secret child, hidden from kings and gods alike. The ink blurred as Jon's breath stopped. "This is madness," he said quietly. "No," Tyrion replied. "It's blood." For a long time, Jon said nothing. He stood by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass like tears. "My father lied to me," he murmured. "My whole life has been a lie." "Not a lie," Tyrion said softly. "A protection." But protection in the Red Keep was a dangerous word. Cersei soon learned of the letter. Her rage was quiet, colder than steel. "A Targaryen?" she whispered to herself. "Under my roof?" That night, Jon felt eyes on him in every corridor. Guards that once bowed now watched in silence. Servants stopped speaking when he entered. Even Jaime's gaze had changed, torn between loyalty and love. In the council chamber, Tywin waited. "Is it true?" he asked. Jon met his eyes, unflinching. "It seems I am not who you thought I was." The old lion studied him in silence. "Then perhaps I trained my greatest enemy." That night, Jon packed his armor and sword. Tyrion came to him one last time. "If you leave now," he said, "there's no coming back." Jon looked north, toward a sky he'd never seen. "Then I'll finally go home." As dawn broke, he rode through the gates of King's Landing. No guards, no banners, no crown. Behind him, the city burned with whispers. Ahead, the wind carried snow. He was no longer Jon Hill. He was not even Jon Snow. He was the son of ice and fire, a name whispered only by ghosts and dragons. And as he disappeared into the northern mist, Cersei stood on the balcony above, watching the road where he had vanished. "The wolf has left the den," she whispered, "but winter is coming for us all." The north welcomed him with silence. Snow fell upon his armor of gold, dimming its shine. Soft flakes turning crimson to silver, lion to wolf. He rode for days through the ruins of war, through burned villages, through empty keeps where ravens perched on broken banners. The realm he had left behind was rich and cruel. The one before him was honest in its pain. In Winterfell, the fires had long gone cold. The halls were dark, the stones whispering of ghosts who once laughed there. Jon dismounted in silence, laid his hand upon the frozen walls, and whispered, "I'm home." The few who remained did not know him. They saw the golden armor, the southern horse, and called him Lannister Knight. He did not argue, for though the world saw a lion, he felt the wolf beneath his skin. But the north was restless. Wildlings stirred beyond the wall. The dead were whispers no one dared speak. And in the south, the queen and her father prepared for war, not against enemies, but against truth itself. Jon could feel it, the pull between both worlds. The wolf called him to protect. The lion whispered of control. When the first snowstorm of winter came, he gathered the few loyal men of the north, soldiers, hunters, orphans, and forged a new banner, a white lion upon a field of gray, the symbol of what he had become. Not Stark, not Lannister, something in between. They called themselves the White Lions, guardians of a realm forgotten by kings. And in their leaders' eyes, fire and ice no longer fought. They danced. Two forces united in one destiny. As he looked north, toward the wall and the endless cold beyond, Jon knew that his true war was only beginning. Beyond the wall, the world had fallen silent. No laughter, no birds, only wind, cold and endless, whispering of things long dead. The stories Jon had once dismissed as legends now walked beneath the pale light of the moon. The dead had risen, their eyes blue as frozen rivers, their steps quiet as snow. Jon stood before his men, the White Lions, wrapped in furs and faith. They were not knights of gold or kings of crowns. They were men who had nothing left but courage. If we fall, he said softly, we fall as one, not as wolves or lions, but as the living. And when the storm came, the world turned to chaos. Fire met frost. Steel sang against bone. The snow turned black with blood and ash. Jon fought like a spirit, born of both worlds. His sword blazing red with dragonfire, gifted by the last Targaryen loyalists. His heart steady and cold as winter itself. From the shadows, the Night King advanced, his crown of ice gleaming beneath the aurora. Their eyes met, fire and void. You do not belong here, the creature's silence seemed to say. Neither do you, Jon whispered back, raising his blade. Their clash split the night. Flame burst from steel. Ice shattered into light. The sky burned green and white, and the sound carried for miles. Not a roar, not a scream, but something older. A memory of creation itself. When dawn came, the dead were gone. The dead were gone. Only snow remained, and a single sword buried in the frost. Tyrion would later write, "They say a man of two worlds saved us that night. A lion's strength with a wolf's heart. A bastard born for both fire and ice." But Jon never returned to the south. He walked into the snow, his cloak torn, his breath fading in the wind. Some say he died there. Others say the flame never went out. And on cold nights, when the northern winds rise and the stars tremble, they swear they can see him. A shadow of white and gold, walking between worlds. Neither dead nor alive, simply eternal. When the storm finally passed, the realm awoke to silence. No horns of victory, no songs of glory. Only the sound of the wind moving through the bones of what once was. The Great War was over. The dead had fallen. The living had paid. In King's Landing, the gold of the throne was cold and empty. Tywin was gone. Cersei's reign had withered beneath her own fire. Tyrion, older now, slower, quieter, walked through the empty halls and whispered to ghosts. All the lions roared, he said softly, and none were left to listen. In the north, spring crept slowly over the ruins. Fields bloomed where blood had once frozen. Children played where swords had fallen. They spoke of him, the man with the silver eyes and the cloak of gold and gray. Some called him the Bastard King, others the White Lion, but most simply called him Jon of Two Fires. They said he appeared when the snow melted, a shadow walking the edge of dawn, guarding the land in silence. And when the stars shone brightest, some swore they saw him upon the wall, looking out toward the endless dark. No crown, no throne, no songs, just a quiet peace. The kind born from sacrifice. In the citadel, maesters debated whether he ever lived at all. A myth, they said. A tale told by northern fires. But somewhere beyond the books and ink, the ravens still flew north every winter, carrying messages no one could read, and deep within the snow, a faint warmth lingered, not from the sun, but from something older, something still watching, a balance, a promise, the union of the wolf and the lion, the fire and the frost. The realm was at peace, not because of kings or queens, but because once a man dared to belong to both worlds. They say every age leaves behind a legend, not carved in stone, not written on thrones, but whispered in the hearts of those who still remember, and in the long nights of winter, when the fire burns low and the wind sings through the halls, old men still tell the tale of the boy who was both wolf and lion. They speak of his eyes, silver like moonlight, and his voice, calm as the snow. They tell of how he rode from the south, with gold upon his armor and frost upon his breath. How he fought, not for power nor crown, but for a world that could belong to both. Some say he died beyond the wall, his body swallowed by the storm. Others say he walks still, a spirit of balance, guarding the fragile peace between fire and shadow. And when the children ask his name, the old ones smile and answer softly. He had many names. Jon Hill, the bastard knight. Jon Snow, the lost wolf. Aegon, son of fire and storm. But in the end, they call him only one thing: the man of two fires. For when the world was breaking, and the cold crept through the hearts of men, it was he who stood alone between the light and the dark, not as a king, but as a reminder that even in the cruelest of worlds, warmth can be born from frost, and mercy can rise from fire. And so, when you next see snow falling beneath a golden dawn, listen closely. You may hear his whisper in the wind, calm, steady, eternal. I am both, and I am neither. The story ends there, in silence and light, where a wolf's howl meets a lion's roar, and the world dreams once more of peace.